parents are probably more intentional about it now than they ever were. Uh, Families tend to be very um, thoughtful and careful about the education of their kids. It's a high value. But during the years of COVID, people started paying attention to what was actually happening in their kids' school, and they started really analyzing the options closer than they ever did before. Many of them taking the bull by the horns and saying, you know what, we're going to homeschool.
Davis, thank you for coming back with me again today. I am so encouraged by these different points. You have 10 points that we're talking through, and these are all points for radically intentional parenting. And like we talked about in the first episode, you and Rachael are through the parenting phase. You've launched all 7 of your kids, which is incredible. And so neat to know that they are walking with the Lord and that your obedience to the Lord and training them up in righteousness has been fruitful. And that is my greatest desire as a mom, is that my kids will leave our home, that they will walk with Jesus all the days of their life, and that they will be completely and fully committed to a life of serving Him. And so these points that you're giving us this week are really to help us with doing just that. You know, we have to be intentional about our parenting. It doesn't just come naturally, and we need wisdom from those of you who have gone before us. So we talked in Monday's episode, we talked about church devotions and family worship and how we can implement those into our family. We talked about meal times and what that looked like for your family. We talked about discipline, and then we talked about kids, and more kids. So let's move on to point 5.
So this list is being presented in roughly the order that you'll face them as parents. And like you said, it's radically intentional parenting. So if you've thought the list was fairly easy so far, and of course you've got it, trust me, the list gets harder as the kids get older and as we go through the rest of this. But number 5 is K-12 education. You've had some kids, and now it's time to decide, how are you going to educate them? Are you going to send them to the public school? Are you going to shovel out the money and do private school? Or are you going to take the full responsibility and homeschool? All 3 are really big decisions with, or big options with big consequences. So this is one that parents are probably more intentional about it now than they ever were. Families tend to be very thoughtful and careful about the education of their kids. It's a high value. But during the years of COVID, people started paying attention to what was actually happening in their kids' school, and they started really analyzing the options closer than they ever did before. Many of them taking the bull by the horns and saying, you know what, we're going to homeschool. This was actually really good for our family to be together, and we learned so much. And it was so much more efficient. We were done by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We had more meals together, all kinds of positives that can happen when you homeschool. And that is obviously what I would classify as the best decision our family made on this topic. But I got to let people know, we were kicking and screaming when we started. This was not something that was part of our plan. And basically, we had our COVID moment in 1996, where we were reluctant, we felt forced, but by God's grace, we got started. And by the 3rd or 4th year is when we were fully committed to this. Even with high school looming off in the distance, we didn't really have all the answers to what that would look like, but we got there and we walked by faith, and God showed us the way when we did. And then with each of our kids, there were issues that we were concerned about or didn't have answers to. And that, again, is part of the walk of faith that happens with homeschooling, is you feel all this responsibility. It can feel overwhelming at times, but it's actually really exciting. I liken it to a roller coaster ride with twists and turns, and you just feel like, you know, your stomach's not going to be able to handle it anymore. and then you get to a portion of the ride where it feels more like the lazy river, and you can sit back and bask in the sun and say, wow, this is great. I love it. And then you're back on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
But number 5 is the education of your kids. Be intentional about that, mom and dad.
Amen. I don't know that I've gotten to the lazy river part yet. Maybe it's coming, but it definitely has been a roller coaster ride. And I will say, for the most part, it has been a fun roller coaster ride with many scary drops and turns and twists. And in the end, you know what? We get off the roller coaster and we get to look back and say, that was really fun. Homeschool Insights is sponsored by CTC Math. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com and try it for free. For more great homeschool inspiration and resources, listen to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.